I never thought I'd be the kind of grandmother who'd cut her family out of her life, but some betrayals are so deep, so casual in their cruelty that they change everything in an instant. It was a Tuesday afternoon in September when my world shifted. Not with a dramatic confrontation or a heated argument, but through the tinny speaker of a baby monitor I'd purchased for my son's family just 2 weeks earlier. Hi, I'm Carolyn, and this is my story. Before we begin, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your state or country in the comments. It helps me know I'm not alone in this journey. I'm 72 now, but back then I was a sprightly 67, recently widowed after 43 years of marriage to my beloved Thomas. We'd built a beautiful life together in Washington State, a comfortable home in Spokane, a thriving medical supply business that Thomas had grown from nothing, and investments that had done better than we'd ever imagined. We weren't wealthy by billionaire standards, but we were secure. Very secure. My son Jacob was our only child. We'd poured everything into him, the best schools, college without debt, and a substantial down payment on his first home when he married Melissa. She seemed pleasant enough at first, reserved, maybe a little distant, but I attributed that to normal adjustment. Not everyone bonds with their in-laws immediately, I told myself. They had 2 children, Emma, who was 6, and little Oliver just turned 4. I adored those children with every fiber of my being. After Thomas passed, they became my reason to keep going. I'd visit every Sunday, bringing homemade cookies, reading stories, playing endless games of pretend. I thought I was part of their lives. I thought I mattered. The baby monitor was a practical gift. Oliver had recently moved to his own room, and Melissa had mentioned they needed a good monitoring system. I found a top-of-the-line model, one with crystal-clear audio, a wide range, and even video capabilities. I had it delivered and set up during one of my Sunday visits, feeling pleased with myself for being a helpful, thoughtful grandmother. What I didn't realize was that I was about to install a front-row seat to the truth. It happened 3 days later. I'd forgotten my reading glasses at their house, those expensive progressive lenses I couldn't function without. I called, but no one answered. Jacob had given me a key for emergencies years ago, so I drove over, planning to slip in, grab my glasses, and leave a note. The house was quiet when I entered. My glasses were on the kitchen counter, right where I'd left them. I was about to leave when I heard voices coming from the baby monitor receiver that is sat on the kitchen island. The system was still paired to my phone from when I'd helped set it up, and it had automatically connected when I walked in. I should have left. I should have disconnected and walked out, but I heard my name and I froze. Melissa's voice came through clear as crystal. "I'm telling you, Sarah, I can barely stand Sundays anymore. She's here every single week." Sarah. That was Melissa's sister. I could hear her responding, though less clearly. Something about family obligations. "It's not even the time," Melissa continued. "It's everything else. The way she hovers. The way she constantly gives the kids sugar before dinner. And God, that smell. You know what I mean? That old person smell, like mothballs and dust and whatever perfume they've worn for 50 years. My hand went instinctively to my chest. I wore Chanel No. 5, the same perfume Thomas had given me on our first anniversary. The same perfume I'd worn for decades. Yesterday, Emma came to me after Carolyn left and said, "Grandma hugs too tight and too long. I had to sit the kids down this morning." I heard small footsteps, then Emma's voice, sweet and innocent. "Mommy, when is Grandma coming again?" "Sunday, baby. Listen, I want to talk to you and Oliver about something important." There was a pause. Then Melissa's voice took on that careful tone adults use when they're teaching children something they want to stick. "You know how much Grandma loves you, right?" "Yes," Emma said. Oliver's little voice echoed her. "Well, sometimes Grandma might want to hug you a lot, and that's okay. But you don't have to hug her for too long if you don't want to, especially if, well, you know how Grandma has that smell, that old people smell." My eyes filled with tears. I gripped the counter to steady myself. "Like at Aunt Carol's nursing home?" Emma asked. "Exactly like that. It's not Grandma's fault. All old people smell like that eventually. But you don't have to press your face into her clothes when you hug her, okay? A quick hug is fine. And if she tries to hold you longer, you can just pull away. I won't be mad. Is Grandma going to die soon like Grandpa? Oliver's small voice asked. Because she's old? Well, honey, she is getting very old. That's why she moves slow sometimes and forgets things. We need to be patient with her, but we also don't have to pretend everything is perfect. I heard Sarah's voice again, laughing about something. Then Melissa continued. Honestly, I think Jacob feels obligated because of the money. His dad left her everything, and she keeps dropping hints about her will. But I've told him, we're doing fine on our own. We don't need to spend every Sunday performing gratitude for an inheritance we might not even get. Does she have much? Sarah asked. Melissa's voice dropped conspiratorially. Jacob says the business sold for nearly $4 million, plus their investments in the house. She's probably worth $6 or $7 million easy, maybe more. But you know what? I'd rather have my Sundays back. The kids can have a relationship with her without us having to orchestrate it every single week. I stood in that kitchen for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. My hands trembled as I carefully placed my glasses in my purse. I looked at the family photos on the wall, Emma and Oliver's gap-toothed smiles, Jacob's graduation photo, a picture of all of us from last Christmas. In that moment, something inside me didn't break. It clarified. I'd spent my entire life being thoughtful, generous, and loving. After Thomas died, I'd clung to Jacob and his family like a lifeline. I'd shown up every Sunday not because I expected anything in return, but because I loved them, because family was supposed to matter. But I'd been fooling myself. To Melissa, I was an obligation, a smell, a hovering presence to be endured for the promise of money. And Jacob, my son, the boy I'd raised, had apparently discussed my worth in dollars while allowing his wife to teach my grandchildren to recoil from my touch. I drove home in a daze. When I walked into my house, the house Thomas and I had filled with love and laughter, I looked at everything differently. The photos, the furniture, the lifetime of memories. I'd been planning to leave it all to Jacob and the children. The house, the investments, the carefully managed portfolio that had grown substantially since Thomas's death. I'd already made Jacob the primary beneficiary of my life insurance, a substantial policy that Thomas had insisted on years ago. My will, drafted shortly after Thomas's passing, left everything to Jacob, with trusts established for Emma and Oliver's education and future. They were set to inherit everything, and they were counting on it. I sat down at my kitchen table and made myself a cup of tea, Earl Grey, which I drank from Thomas's favorite mug. Then I opened my laptop and sent an email to my attorney, Harold Brennan. We'd known each other for 30 years. He'd handled everything for Thomas and me. The business sale, estate planning, the works. Harold, I wrote, I need to see you this week. I'm making significant changes to my estate plan. All of it. He responded within an hour, offering me an appointment for Thursday morning. That night, I didn't sleep. I replayed Melissa's words over and over. I thought about every Sunday I'd spent with those children, every gift, every moment I'd cherished, and I thought about how casually, how easily Melissa had reduced me to a burden with the bank account. But more than that, I thought about Jacob, my son, who had apparently told his wife about my finances in enough detail that she could quote figures, who had allowed, perhaps even encouraged, this attitude toward me, who hadn't once defended me or suggested that maybe, just maybe I was visiting because I loved them, not because I was securing their inheritance. By Thursday, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Harold's office was in downtown Spokane, in one of those older buildings with real marble floors and wooden paneling that spoke of substance and permanence. When I walked in, his secretary greeted me warmly. She'd known Thomas and me for years. Harold rose when I entered his office, concern evident on his face. He was 75, gray-haired and sharp as ever. Carolyn, your email worried me. Is everything all right? Sit down, Harold. This is going to take some time. I told him everything, every word I'd heard through that baby monitor. The casual cruelty, the calculation, the way my grandchildren were being taught to minimize their affection because of how I smelled. Harold listened without interruption, his expression growing more somber. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. I've been doing this for 40 years, Carolyn. I've seen families torn apart over money more times than I can count. What do you want to do? I want them removed. All of them. Completely. From the will. From everything. The will. The life insurance. Every trust, every account, every single thing that has their names on it. I want them gone. Harold pulled out a legal pad. All right, let's talk about the scope. Your current will leaves your entire estate to Jacob, with educational trusts for Emma and Oliver. Your life insurance, that's a $2 million policy, currently names Jacob as primary beneficiary. You have some smaller accounts and investments with Jacob listed as beneficiary or co-owner. We'll need to address all of it. All of it, I confirmed. Every last penny. And who do you want as your beneficiaries instead? This was the question I'd wrestled with for 2 days. I want to establish scholarships at Washington State University, specifically for students from low-income families studying nursing. That's what I did before I married Thomas. I want to fund medical research at the hospital where Thomas was treated. I want to support the animal shelter where we got our dogs over the years. And I want to ensure my niece Claire is taken care of. She's been more of a daughter to me these past years than Jacob has been a son. Claire was my brother's daughter. After her parents died in a car accident 10 years ago, I'd helped her finish college and get established. She called me weekly, visited monthly, and had never once made me feel like an obligation. Harold made notes. This is comprehensive. It's also going to send a very clear message when they eventually find out. I don't want them to find out now, I said. I want them to discover it after I'm gone. I want them to sit in that reading of the will and realize exactly what they lost. That could be years from now, Carolyn. Are you sure you don't want to confront them? I thought about this carefully. If I confront them, Melissa will apologize. She'll cry and say she didn't mean it. Jacob will be caught between us. They'll perform reconciliation for however long it takes to get back into my good graces. And I'll never know if it's real or just more calculation. But if you simply distance yourself naturally, then they'll assume everything is fine. They'll assume the money is still coming, and when the truth arrives, they'll understand exactly what their words cost them. Harold nodded slowly. I'll draft everything. But Carolyn, I have to ask, what about Emma and Oliver? Their children. They're being influenced by their parents. This was the part that hurt most. Those children are being taught that love has a price tag, Harold, that elderly people are burdens to be endured. If I leave them money, I'm validating everything their mother is teaching them. Maybe someday, when they're older, they'll understand. But right now, the kindest thing I can do is let them learn that actions have consequences. We spent 3 hours going through every detail. Harold would redraft my will, reassign all beneficiaries, establish the scholarships and charitable trusts. Everything would be ironclad, no room for legal challenges. One more thing, Harold said as I was preparing to leave. You should prepare yourself. When they receive notification after your death, there will likely be anger, accusations of undue influence, mental incompetence, all the usual challenges. I'm having a full cognitive assessment done next week, I told him. Dr. Morrison has already agreed. I'll be evaluated by a neurologist and a psychiatrist. I want it documented that I was of completely sound mind when I made these decisions. Harold smiled grimly. You've thought of everything. I had a good teacher. Thomas always said that estate planning wasn't about death. It was about making sure your values outlived you. Over the next 3 weeks, I executed my plan with quiet precision. I had the cognitive assessments. Both doctors confirmed I was sharp as a tack. Harold prepared all the new documents. I signed them in his office with his entire staff as witnesses. Then came the harder part, maintaining normalcy. That Sunday, I showed up at Jacob's house as usual. I brought cookies. I hugged Emma and Oliver, noting the almost imperceptible way Emma stiffened slightly and kept the embrace brief. Melissa smiled at me, that tight, performative smile I now recognized as barely concealed tolerance. "How are you feeling, Mom?" Jacob asked. "You seem quiet." "Just tired, honey. It's been a long week." "You're not overdoing it, are you? Remember, you're not as young as you used to be." There it was, that casual reminder of my age, my limitations, my approaching obsolescence. I smiled serenely. "I'm taking good care of myself. Don't worry." I stayed for 2 hours instead of my usual 4. When Melissa looked relieved as I gathered my things to leave, I pretended not to notice. "In the car," I cried. Not for the money. I'd never cared much about wealth for its own sake, but for the loss of what I'd thought we had, the family I'd believed in, the love I'd thought was real. That was the last normal Sunday. I began spacing out my visits. First I called and said I was fighting a cold, didn't want to get the children sick. Then I mentioned a church commitment, then a friend who needed help. The visits went from weekly to bi-weekly to monthly. Jacob called occasionally. "Mom, we miss you. The kids keep asking when you're coming." If that were true, he'd have called more than occasionally. Months turned into years. I built a new life, one that didn't revolve around earning the affection of people who saw me as a walking inheritance. I volunteered at the hospital where Thomas had been treated. I joined a book club. I traveled to places Thomas and I had always talked about visiting: Scotland, New Zealand, the Canadian Rockies. I spent time with Claire, who never once asked me about my will or made me feel like my age was a burden. We had long dinners where she actually listened to my stories. She introduced me to her friends, including me in her life rather than sectioning me off as an obligation. The transformation was remarkable. I'd spent 2 years after Thomas's death feeling like I was fading away. Now, at 70, I felt vital again. Purpose-driven, free. Jacob's calls became less frequent, too. The initial concern about my reduced visits gave way to what seemed like relief. Melissa never called at all. Birthdays and holidays became cards in the mail rather than gatherings. The children, I heard through Claire, who still had contact with that side of the family, barely mentioned me anymore. Good, I thought. Let them forget. Let them assume I'm just an old woman, fading quietly into irrelevance. I continued updating my will periodically, not the beneficiaries, but the details. The scholarship fund grew. I added provisions for medical research into Alzheimer's disease, which had taken Thomas's mother. I established a fund for low-income seniors who needed help with prescription costs. Every time I reviewed these documents with Harold, I felt more certain I'd made the right choice. This money would do real good in the world. It would help people who actually needed it, not fund the lifestyle of people who'd calculated my worth in dollars while teaching children to recoil from my embrace. Then I turned 72. Claire threw me a small birthday party. Just a dozen close friends I'd made in recent years, people who valued me for who I was, not what I had. It was the happiest birthday I'd had since Thomas died. Jacob sent a card, store-bought, generic message, no call. That night, I received an email from Harold. "Carolyn, I know this is morbid, but I'm attaching a finalized letter to be sent to Jacob upon your passing. It will be delivered by my office simultaneously with the notification about the will reading. I thought you might want to review it one final time." I opened the attachment. The letter was professional, legal, and devastatingly clear. "Dear Jacob, this letter is to inform you that your mother, Carolyn Mitchell, passed away on a date. As executor of her estate, I am writing to notify you that Mrs. Mitchell made substantial changes to her estate planning in year, removing you, your wife Melissa, and your children Emma and Oliver as beneficiaries from all aspects of her estate, including her will, life insurance policies, and investment accounts. The reading of the will is scheduled for date. Your attendance is not required as you are not named in any capacity. The estate will be distributed according to Mrs. Mitchell's wishes to various charitable organizations and other beneficiaries. Should you have questions, you may contact this office." I read the letter 3 times. It was perfect, professional, yet pointed. It would arrive like a thunderbolt, completely unexpected. But then something Harold had written in his email caught my attention. I've included language that references the timing of the changes, so Jacob will understand this wasn't a recent decision made in declining health. He'll know you've been planning this for years. Years. It had been almost 5 years since that September afternoon when I'd heard those words through the baby monitor. 5 years of reduced contact, of holidays marked by cards instead of presents, of a grandmother slowly being written out of her grandchildren's lives. And in those 5 years, Jacob had never once asked why I'd pulled back, never questioned the distance, never pushed for more time together. That, more than anything, confirmed I'd made the right choice. I want to pause here and ask you something. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt undervalued by the people you loved most, please subscribe to this channel. Share your stories in the comments. Let's build a community where our experiences and our worth are recognized, because we matter, regardless of our age or what we might leave behind. Life continued its steady march. I turned 73, then 74. My health remained excellent. The doctors marveled at my vitality. "You're healthier than patients 20 years younger," Dr. Morrison told me. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." What I was doing was living for myself for the first time in decades. No guilt, no obligation to people who'd made it clear I was dispensable, no pretending that casual cruelty could be overlooked for the sake of keeping the peace. Claire met someone, a wonderful man named David who treated her with respect and genuine affection. When they got engaged, she asked me to stand with her at the wedding. "You've been more of a mother to me than an aunt," she said, tears in her eyes. "I can't imagine this day without you." I sobbed through the entire ceremony. Happy tears, grateful tears. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Jacob sent Claire a gift. He didn't attend the wedding. In his card, he mentioned how busy they were with the kids' activities. Emma was 12 now, Oliver 10. Growing up without their grandmother, but apparently not missing me enough to merit a visit. After the wedding, Claire and David settled into a house just 15 minutes from mine. We saw each other weekly, not out of obligation, but out of genuine love and enjoyment. She never asked about my finances. She never calculated my remaining years or wondered what she might inherit. She just loved me. Imagine that. I began to think about my legacy in concrete terms. The scholarship fund was established and would continue in perpetuity. I donated enough to the hospital that they were naming a wing after Thomas. The animal shelter had expanded their senior pet adoption program with my funding. My money, the money Jacob and Melissa had discussed in dollar amounts while teaching children to limit their affection, was going to change lives. Real lives. People and animals who needed help, not people who felt entitled to wealth they hadn't earned. Then came the call I'd been half expecting for years, though not in the form it arrived. It was a Tuesday morning in April. I remember because I'd just planted tulips in my garden, the same deep purple ones Thomas had loved. My phone rang. Jacob's number. We hadn't spoken in over 4 months. The last conversation had been a stilted 5-minute call at Christmas where he'd put Emma and Oliver on the line briefly. They'd sounded like strangers being polite to an elderly relative they barely knew. "Mom," Jacob said when I answered. His voice had an odd quality, strained, careful. "How are you?" "I'm well, Jacob." "How are Emma and Oliver?" "They're good, growing like weeds." "Actually, Mom, that's kind of why I'm calling. Emma's graduating from 8th grade next month, and she specifically asked if you'd be there." The lie was so transparent it was almost insulting. Emma barely remembered me. This wasn't her request. "That's sweet of her," I said neutrally. "Yeah, and actually we were thinking. It's been too long since we've all spent real time together. Maybe you could come for dinner this weekend. Melissa wants to make your favorite pot roast." Melissa, who'd called me a burden, who'd taught her children that old people smell, who'd calculated my worth in inheritance dollars, that Melissa wanted to make me dinner. That's thoughtful, but I'm actually quite busy these days. I've taken on more volunteer work and my schedule is rather full. There was a pause. "Mom, is everything okay? Between us, I mean?" Now, after 5 years, he was asking. I could have said everything. I could have told him about the baby monitor, the words I'd heard, the casual cruelty that had shattered my illusions. I could have had the confrontation Harold had once suggested. But what would be the point? Jacob was calling now because Emma was approaching high school, and maybe college planning was on his mind. Maybe Melissa had done some math and realized I was 74 and getting older. Maybe they'd decided it was time to secure their investment. Everything's fine, Jacob. I've just been building a life that makes me happy. You understand? Of course, but family is important. The kids need their grandmother. The kids needed their grandmother when they were 6 and 4. Now they were 12 and 10, practically raised without me because Melissa found my presence inconvenient and my smell offensive. I'll try to make the graduation, I said, knowing I wouldn't. Send me the details. After I hung up, I sat in my garden for a long time. The tulips swayed in the breeze. A robin built a nest in my oak tree. Life continued, indifferent to human drama and disappointment. That evening, I called Harold. The letter you drafted, is everything in order? Everything's been in order for 5 years, Carolyn. Why? Just checking. Jacob called today. First time in months. It made me think. Having second thoughts? Not even slightly. I just wanted to make sure that when the time comes, everything is crystal clear. No ambiguity. No room for them to claim I was confused or manipulated. Carolyn, you've had more cognitive assessments than most people get in a lifetime. You've been evaluated by 3 different psychiatrists over the years, all at your request. You've documented your reasoning extensively. When I send that letter, there won't be any doubt that this was your clear, conscious choice. Good. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Life continued its rhythm. I didn't attend Emma's graduation. I sent a generous gift card and a note, maintaining the appearance of a distant but well-meaning grandmother. Jacob called to thank me, the relief in his voice palpable that I hadn't shown up to disrupt their day. Summer came and went. I traveled to Alaska, something Thomas and I had always planned but never managed. I stood on a glacier and felt the ancient ice beneath my feet and thought about legacy, how some things endure and others melt away. Claire got pregnant. When she told me, crying with joy, I held her tight and felt what real family love was supposed to feel like. You're going to be a great grandmother, she whispered. I'm going to be the best damn great aunt in history, I corrected her, and we both laughed. At 75, I was still healthy, still active, still making plans. Dr. Morrison said my vitals were excellent. You're probably good for another 20 years at this rate, he joked. But life is uncertain. I updated my will one final time, adding provisions for Claire's baby. Not a massive amount, just enough to help with education someday. Enough to show love without creating dependency. Jacob called on my 75th birthday. It was the first time he'd called on my actual birthday in 3 years. Mom, we really need to see you more. The kids miss you. The kids who hadn't called me themselves. The kids who'd been taught that I was someone to endure in small doses. Those kids. That's sweet, Jacob. We'll arrange something. We never did. Another year passed. I was 76 when Claire had her baby, a beautiful girl named Sophie. I held that infant and felt pure, uncomplicated love. No calculation, no wondering if my affection would be measured against my bank account. Just love. Aunt Carolyn, Claire said as I rocked Sophie, I want you to know something. You saved me after my parents died, not just financially, emotionally. You showed me what unconditional love looks like. I want Sophie to know that kind of love, too. I kissed the baby's soft head and blinked back tears. She'll have it, I promise. That night, I reviewed my estate documents one final time. Everything was in order. The scholarships that would help dozens of students, the medical research funding that might save lives, the animal shelter that would continue caring for forgotten creatures, Claire's modest but meaningful inheritance, the letter that would explain everything. And nothing, not one single dollar, for Jacob, Melissa, Emma, or Oliver. I slept peacefully that night, more peacefully than I had in years. The weight of betrayal had transmuted into the clarity of purpose. They'd valued money over love. Now they'd have neither. Justice, I'd learned, didn't always roar. Sometimes it waited, patient and quiet, for exactly the right moment to speak. I made it to 78. Another 2 years of good health, of watching Sophie grow into a precocious toddler, of morning walks and volunteer work, and lunches with friends who valued me for myself. Jacob's calls had dwindled to obligatory check-ins every few months. The grandchildren were teenagers now, Emma 16, Oliver 14, virtual strangers bearing my DNA. Then, on a crisp October morning, I had a stroke, a significant one. I spent 3 weeks in the hospital where I donated so much money being cared for by nurses in the wing named after Thomas. The irony wasn't lost on me. Claire never left my side. She brought Sophie to visit, the little girl's chatter somehow both exhausting and life-affirming. Jacob came too, of course, once. He stayed for an hour, uncomfortable and awkward, before citing work obligations and leaving. I survived, but I was diminished. The doctors were honest. Another stroke was likely. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not this year, but coming. I was 78, and my body was finally acknowledging what Melissa had taught her children years ago. Old people don't last forever. Harold visited me in the hospital. "Everything's in order," he said quietly. "The moment you pass, the letters go out. The will is filed. It's all documented and ironclad." "Thank you," I whispered, "for everything." I lived another 4 months. Claire moved into my house to care for me, not because she expected anything, but because she loved me. Sophie's laughter filled rooms that had been quiet too long. Jacob visited twice more. Both times he mentioned how glad he was that I'd had the foresight to plan ahead financially. The subtext was clear. He was glad there would be an inheritance. He'd counted on it, built plans around it. I almost told him, but I held my tongue. Let him keep his assumptions. Let him keep believing that decades of calculated indifference would be rewarded with my life savings. When the end came, it came quietly. Another stroke. This one final. I slipped away on a Tuesday afternoon. The same days of the week I'd overheard those words through the baby monitor all those years ago. The symmetry felt appropriate. Claire was holding my hand. Sophie was napping in the next room. My last conscious thought was of Thomas, and how proud he'd be that I'd turned our wealth into something meaningful, instead of rewarding people who'd never valued anything but the money itself. Harold acted swiftly. Within hours of my death, the letters were sent. By the next morning, Jacob had received the notification that he was removed from my will. Completely, entirely. No inheritance, no trust funds for Emma and Oliver, nothing. According to Claire, who heard about it from a mutual acquaintance, Jacob called Harold's office 17 times that first day. Melissa called 6 times. They demanded meetings, explanations, copies of the will. They threatened legal action. Harold, bless him, remained professionally neutral. He explained that I'd been evaluated for mental competency multiple times over the years, that I documented my reasoning extensively, that the will was ironclad and had been in place for years. Years. That word must have hit them like a sledgehammer.